I'm Michele Granberg. Welcome to Positive Energy. Do you love animals? Do you live with animals? They're part of the family. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could communicate with animals on a more conscious level? Mm-hmm. My guest, Dr. Linda Bender, is a doctor of veterinary medicine, author of Animal Wisdom, and an animal advocate. She's going to enlighten us as to how we can communicate better, understand better, and respect animals. So Linda, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here again.
I'm excited to continue the conversation about animals and branch it off into more of our personal relationships with animals and the world relationship with animals as well. You know, we live with animals, but to a degree we take them for granted. And we think we understand them. We think we understand them, but do we really understand them? Because we don't talk the way you and I are talking to one another, trying to find understanding. And it made me think, when I know we were going to speak about talking to animals today, about the Dr. Dolittle movie.
That's
Did you watch that?
Of course.
Who didn't watch it? I loved that movie, and when I got so caught up in the magical, how wonderful it would be to be able to talk to animals as in the movie he was able to talk and understand, how cool that would be. So in your book you talk about communication not as a skill that we need to acquire, but it is something that we already are capable of, and it is wired within us, but perhaps we have lost touch with that, forgotten that language. It's more of an exchange of meaning and energy and emotion. And animals communicate telepathically for the most part. So talk about animal communication, how it is in your perspective and what makes it unique.
Well, I think most basically people should remember that when you want to communicate with an animal or any being, it isn't about doing. As humans, we want to do. We're great doers. But it's truly more about being. It's about being and receiving. And again, a lot of people are talking to animals.
You're talking at them.
Talking at them. And what they're not doing a lot of is really listening. And that's a key. It's actually a lot more simple.
Maybe that's more important to listen and to be present than it is to just use a lot of words.
But you also said that it's a spiritual being, and we're all connecting, and we're all intuitive. And we notice the intuitive abilities of animals. They're more active, they're more in it. They tend to be mostly more hidden, more latent in humans, because we've let those muscles get really lazy. It's not that they're not there, but we're not using them. We're very much connected, but what are we connected to in our modern society? We're connected to our laptops, our iPhones. We're not connecting to nature and even each other anymore, you know. So one thing I say that animals are teaching us, particularly our companion animals, is they're like a bridge. They help us go from where we are to where we can be. They help us open the potential that we can be, are moving toward, evolving and transforming into. Because I really, really believe that we are evolving as humans from physical, mental beings to spiritual and intuitive beings. And animals are right here.
They're right there.
Incarnated beings that can help us move in that direction. And so if we want to connect more deeply to anyone, and let's use our dog and cats as an example, we need to connect with ourselves first. And get back into remembering that we are spiritual, intuitive beings. And how do we do that? We start by looking inward instead of outside inside. Because let's face it, you know, our attempts to teach language to most animals has been an abysmal failure. You know, we're not carrying on great discussions at this time. So we need to work from our hearts and that soul connection. So I have a whole chapter in the book, helpful, very simple exercises. But when we go inward into our own hearts, and listen to the voices inside. Try to quiet our minds. We can't turn off thoughts. You know, I spent many years teaching meditation, and I do meditate. I think it's essential for humans and to be a good communicator to anyone, humans or animals or nature. Meditation is key. So we begin there. We begin by going inside to our intuitive inner heart and soul voices.
And that's where we sense it, in those quiet spaces.
Right, and then we become beings who are able to receive. And intuitively, animals know when you are open, when your heart is open, your mind is open, and you are ready to receive, and you are showing love and compassion, you become almost irresistible, you know.
That's how they see it. Yeah.
Sure.
Like magnets again.
Right. And
because
so
they're so open in their hearts.
Yes.
So when we are,
Yeah. And you're basically entering that field. When you open, that's what you're doing. You're opening yourself to be a more effective receiver of what's out there in the field from them, and they understand that. And then you are, it's quite natural. It's quite an easy process.
So animals really are at all times picking up on our energy, our emotion, our mental state.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've heard it say that dogs can smell fear, but it's part of that.
It is.
But it's much more than that.
Yeah.
And so is it especially so when we share a dwelling, especially for many, many years? Does that must increase over time from just sharing space?
Yeah.
It happens with our family too. We can
Right.
finish each other's sentences very often and almost know what each other is thinking. And there's lots more research, as you said in your book, around
lots of research.
Animals' sixth sense.
Sure.
One of the most interesting one was about animals can sense when there's going to be an earthquake or a natural disaster of some kind.
Sure. Yes.
So say something.
Tons of information out there about that. You know, in the tsunami in Thailand, in that area, it was obvious that, you know, all different species, elephants, birds, dogs, they were all taking to the hills.
They cleared out.
They went
for the hills.
And people have seen this with birds and tornadoes. There was a recent study that showed people, what's very interesting, there are two studies that come to mind. One was people who are already studying the habits of a particular species of bird. So they were being monitored, and then they suddenly disappeared. Their habits totally changed. I thought, well, what's going on here? And then 3 days later, tornadoes were coming in. So they actually had the data that showed, look, these animals knew something was coming. It also happened, has happened in a few other species. In Assisi, in Italy, there was a huge earthquake back in, I think it was 97. And after some people went in and conducted some questions in the local community. Did you notice anything different before? And in the I guess what the equivalent of the town hall would be, there were numerous complaints by restaurateurs who said, we don't know what's going on, something has to be done because rats are coming out and they're scrambling and running all over the place. We've never seen anything like it. They're frantic rats running all over and we're losing our customers. Sure enough, they were picking up the knowing that the earthquake was coming. And then after...
And too soon for it to be a drop in barometric pressure that the scientists will probably say that.
Yes. And some of that can be true, but there is a compelling amount of data that says there's a lot going on here that we just cannot explain.
We need to pay attention. They're sending us
Much
warnings.
And why not utilize that?
Yes.
It could save thousands of lives if we paid attention.
Yes. And less expensive, less technology.
Certainly.
We can get rid of the weather equipment.
Certainly, more accurate.
We just have, just go to the zoo and just visit, or
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And that relates also to animals can sense when their owners are coming home. I love that. There's data there around that. And in the same respect, they can sense illness in humans and cancer.
Yes.
So are there some compelling examples that you can share with that?
Now, some of that, for instance, animals detecting cancer. Now, you could assign, well, maybe there's a particular smell or a scent. There are questions there. But if you just look at basic homing with pigeons,
right.
We know pigeon homing happens. We have absolutely no idea how it works, how it's done. We just don't understand. It's one of the profound mysteries. Yeah.
And the stories of dogs that find their owners miles and miles and miles and miles away, and vice versa. Animals that find their way home.
Yes, been tested, and scientific data shows that has shown that you get yes, it's not 2 miles away. It's beyond what they can hear. Right. It's been tested, and sure enough, they know. And what is the factor that makes it happen most all the time, is the emotional bond. It's the emotional bond that creates the situation where the animal does it. And when does it happen? When does the dog perk up and walk to the door? That's been tested too. And it's not a distance or a time, whatever. What it is when the owner has the intention, when the owner puts the intention in their mind, okay, I'm going home now. Right. That's when they pick it up. Yeah. So is that fascinating?
And it's the signal.
Again, you're in a field. I truly believe, and a lot of the information shows that there is a field. And when you are emotionally bonded to someone in your pack, your family, whatever, you're connected in that field. And so when the owner puts out that intention, woo, I'm picking that up. I'm connected. I'm bonded to that person. Wow, they're coming home.
It activates that connection. It broadens it. It strengthens it in that way. Yeah. So now people are going to be listening to this and going to say, I'm going to send a signal to my dog tonight on my way home.
Yeah, and actually it happens so frequently that people were thinking, well, why doesn't it happen 100% of the time? And then you have to realize that, well, not all animals care. They make
sense, and they go,
who cares?
They're coming home again.
Yeah.
And you said in your book, sometimes it depends on if you give a really happy response to your dog as soon as you come in the door, that's going to make a difference as well. They're looking looking forward to that.
Yeah. And cats too. Cats can be very, well, I don't care about you, but that one I care about. Yes, and cats are particularly receptive to knowing in advance who's calling on the phone. To someone that they're very attached to. They'll hop on the counter if there's a phone, and before it rings, they'll be pawing it and knowing that someone they love is going to be phoning.
They're connected to the phone for
whatever
reason.
Right.
What about wild animals, exotic animals out in the wild, and what can they teach us about intuition? What are some examples of their intuition amongst their own species and as it relates to us?
Well, I think they have it, perfected pretty well. I mean, they have to know, and even in humans and in indigenous cultures, it's the San people in South Africa have what they call, they're wired. There's a wiring here, and they use the term wire, excuse me, because back in the day when they heard about the white people coming and they had the wireless communication system, they said, oh, well, yeah, we're wired too, but we're wired in here. And so they're wired not only to other humans, but also to the animals in nature. I've witnessed this. I've been with the San people in South Africa out in the bush. in the Kalahari Desert, and they often at the end of the day gather and share the news, and the birds will come because the birds are great messengers, and they will bring back the news of what's happened on the savannah or the bush and share it with others. And so it's like going to your local Starbucks, what's gone on today, and it's all happening.
It's all happening. It's all around us. When you hear the birds singing, just going outside,
Right.
they're communicating telepathically, intuitively,
Right.
as well as with their voice.
Right, exactly.
Amongst themselves. They have a system.
They do.
It's organized. They
do.
know what they're
They do.
doing.
And every species has its own unique way of communicating amongst themselves and also with other species.
So you've been doing this work for a long time, and I know that you've done personal connecting with animals.
Yes.
And you've been witness to or heard so much of the data that is out there. What do animals want us to know? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, but do they have a main message? I guess I'm going to say it's something about unconditional love and compassion. But, what do animals want us to know the most?
Well, I think that we need to remember, and animals want us to know, particularly the large land mammals, the wild animals. We're 7 billion people, and they are dwindling in numbers. Less than 100 years ago, there were millions of elephants in Africa. Today, there are less than 200,000. And that's, with poaching, we're losing about 38,000 a year. So you do the math. If we don't do something soon, they'll be gone. So, of course, there's an urgent message.
So they know that. They know, the species themselves know they're becoming extinct?
I am quite certain, in my personal experience, that they know. And they're not only grieving for what's happening to them, but they also see what we're doing to ourselves. And so what they very much need us to understand is that we are not separate. We are all one, and we are all interconnected, and we must respect and honor and make room for all life, because all life is precious, and we cannot live without them. As much as we think we cannot live without the other animals in nature, because it's all a sacred.
What we do to them, we're really doing to
what
ourselves.
What we do to animals, we do to ourselves, and I speak a lot about that in the book. When you destroy the habitats of wild animals, whether it be in Africa or here in the U.S., when we cut down the forests, we're destroying their habitats, but we're destroying our own habitat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it cannot be otherwise.
Yeah,
it is.
You can't separate. You can't separate it. You can't categorize it. You can't. You can
cannot.
close your eyes to it, but
Right.
it will catch up with us.
Yes. And so I'm continually reminding people, wherever I speak and wherever I teach, that the conversation of how we redo our relationship to animals and nature is really the most important conversation we should be having today. It is number one, because unless we take care of that, there are no other issues.
It'll be a domino effect.
Right.
Everything will tumble.
Right. So it's huge. We must address this.
So I guess there's many ways of doing that, and one of the ways is to communicate with animals and be present and be in our hearts. So just talk about some of the tools that you describe in the book. There are several for communicating with animals, for connecting with animals.
Sure.
And I know at the heart of it's connecting to self.
Yes. So again, if we're going to change our relationship, and let's face it, the world's in a bit of a mess. Look, the wars, and it's all about fear and anger and hatred. So connecting back to our own hearts is essential. Unless we do that, we won't solve any of our problems. We have the technology available today to solve our problems. We're not utilizing it. Instead of sharing and caring, we're taking and killing and claiming dominion over. So we've got to make that flip. Number one. And then when we do, we open up to a whole other realm of how we can live together, not only with animals, but with each other, and solve the problems we have in the world today. Yeah, it's very basic, and people
Yeah.
are asking me all the time, wherever I go, how can I help? What can I do?
Yes.
I'm only one person. And I remind them that every decision you make
Right.
every day is making a difference.
Mm.
But think about your choices. Think about what you're doing. Are you paying attention? Are you waking up to the choices you're making every day? And what impact is that having on you and animals and nature? So we're doing things all the time.
So it's being more conscious, of course.
Waking up.
Waking up more conscious. How are we projecting our energy in the world and the
Right,
choices we
right.
make throughout the day? Maybe
Right.
it's not to throw that piece of trash on the ground, or
Not to chop down that tree.
not to chop down that tree.
When you're driving down the street,
Right.
paying attention that that road is carved out of the habitats of wildlife. And they're crossing. They're sharing that road. Don't speed. Pay attention
Right.
that wildlife might be crossing. We lose huge millions and millions of animals every year on the roadside. We're cutting our roads through their homes.
Right.
It's waking up to being mindful of
Yeah.
what we're doing every day and what we're eating.
And what we're eating.
And what we're eating. Huge, huge.
Yeah, maybe you
Huge.
could say more about that, because again, people are thinking, well, there's nothing I can do about the roads. I don't make those decisions, and there's nothing I can do. But there is. But there is.
We can go slowly. And when we see a wounded or hurt animal on the side of the road, we stop and help.
We
Why
can help.
should we assume no one else would? We slow down. Because so many times I see cars speeding, and if they had only slowed down, that animal would make it across. If we were simply paying attention, you know. But as far as eating, when people say, is there anything I can do? I say, if you could only do one thing to make a huge difference, is stop eating meat.
So how do animals feel about the fact that I know how I feel about it. It disturbs me to my very core that we kill, that we murder animals for no good reason.
Right, right.
What do they say about that from a soul level? I know there's some free will
Right.
there, but
Yes,
at the
well-
same time, it would be a better world if we didn't.
Again, there's so many of us, and I've been a vegetarian for more years than I want to think about, and now people are talking about we need to be vegan, and I am not personally a vegan, but I do believe it's the future of how are we going to feed all these people.
It's the sustainable path,
Right.
as well as the more evolved path.
Well, what we're doing now is totally unsustainable. And so I have conversations with vegans all the time, and I say, take it on, be a louder voice. Get out there. I'm trying as best I can. I can't address everything. But I also, to the people who, let's face it, I get both sides of the story. I'm never going to give up my meat. Okay, you're never going to give up your meat. Be conscious. Maybe you're not going to give up your meat today, but when you become more conscious,
Right.
perhaps, tomorrow or the next day, you will get there. But at the most basic, it isn't even that we eat the meat. It's what we do to the meat. Because people say this a lot. Well, the indigenous cultures ate meat. They were meat eaters. They were hunters. But it was extraordinarily different. They honored those beings.
Right.
It was a sacred event
Right.
to eat the meat. I don't think we need to do that anymore in our society. But it's getting worse instead of better.
Yeah.
And we need to.
It's getting more and more extreme. So
We need
the
to stop.
pendulum needs to swing back.
We need to stop
gradually.
doing what we're doing.
Yeah. And as you become
Yeah.
more aware of animals
Right.
as our companions, as our
Right.
friends, as
Right.
equal beings, and
Right.
respecting them, you would think
Yes.
you would more
Yes.
naturally go in that
Yeah.
direction.
Right,
I
and
would
when
imagine.
and when we love our dogs and cats,
Right.
and we assign all those emotions to them. But when we start thinking, well, wait a minute,
Right.
if they can suffer and love and hurt, what about these animals, the cows that we're killing, the chickens? So we extend that to think, oh my God, what are we doing?
Well, hopefully there is a lot of good news around that as well. I think all of that is really, really important in the bigger picture for people to stop and not bury their heads in the sand like an ostrich.
Exactly.
And hear that and at least be aware of what's going on and the way animals are being treated. But I know people like you and I and many of the people that I know and love in my spiritual community are trying to really make a difference in that.
Very much.
Let's go back to animal communication just for one moment. What is one thing if someone out there would like to communicate with their cat Fluffy at home? What's one thing that they can do today to start?
Okay, what they can do today is shut up and listen.
You have an exercise about pretending that you are an animal?
Well, okay, they're very simply, let's start with this. Be quiet, and instead of getting out of your mind, instead of thinking how to connect with your cat, try to lower the volume on the thinking and simply sit. And one thing I love to tell people to do, take a Saturday or a Sunday and spend a day in silence, particularly with your animal. It is amazing how quickly you get out of having to speak, and you just stop. You don't listen to the radio, you don't listen to watch the TV. You stop the talking and you go into silence. And then you hang out with your animal. It's amazing how you begin to pick up things, even just by doing that. And I love to tell people to go to a shelter. Go to a shelter. And they often have rooms, a common room where there's so many cats looking for homes that they'll be in a room hanging out together. Just go in the room and sit with them and simply be. And see what happens. I did this to a friend who was just desperate to communicate more with his cat. I said, stop it. Told him to go to a shelter. It was huge. Made a huge difference. It just somehow clicked how just being, not trying, not doing.
Just notice what you feel. But people, it makes them feel vulnerable sometimes. It brings up some of their own fears, and yet, just move through that and be with that emotion. I think another wonderful thing people can do is to buy your book.
And it's got a whole chapter in there of simple things. We tend to think it's so difficult.
They are simple
which blocks it.
And they are simple exercises.
Very
and they're
simple.
Common sense.
Yes.
So I hope that people will reach out to you. So we're almost out of time already, but tell us your website again and what people will find on your website.
Yes. It's lindabender.org. And you'll find on there a link to my Facebook. Lots of fun things going on Facebook, Twitter. And you'll find out about my nonprofit, From the Heart, which works with not only wildlife, because I spent so many years working in the trenches, what people can do and how to help with that, but also our dogs and cats and how people can get involved, because we have such an overpopulation problem in this country. So there are many ways to get involved there. And then also send in your dog and cat stories, wonderful stories. Collecting a database. And I get the most extraordinary stories from people and their companion animals.
I bet you do. I bet you do, because they are relationship stories.
Oh, they're amazing stories, and that's our truth. That is our truth.
So that's a great place to start. Go to Linda's website if you'd like to learn more about supporting animals and making a difference in the world. Go to lindabender.org. You can also reach out to me. I'd love to know what you thought about today's show. Did this make a difference for you? Did it change your way of thinking about animals? Will it change the way that you relate to animals? My website's michellegranberg.com. I have a Facebook page also for Positive Energy TV Show, and my email is positiveenergytvshow@gmail.com. So thank you for joining us, and thank you, Linda, for all the wisdom that you have shared. And for your compassion for animals and for your work that you do in the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And join us again next time on Positive Energy.